over to the crypto side, So the first art festival, which also happened very similarly, like with a tweet that Joe Looney sent. Uh, Joe Looney did some homework, just like Major Arts did, and found a number of platforms that were doing rare art, including the CryptoPunks and us and the Rare Art Labs guys. And he sent a tweet saying something like, "Shall we all get together and do a festival?" And the guys from Rare Art Labs took that upon themselves, which I thought was great. And in the space of 1 month, really, they organized this festival. I think we started talking in December, and by January 13th, we had this very seminal event where, like, I was on one of the panels. Bea presented, I believe, the Creeps and Weirdos, and there were like very few platforms at the time. And so we even did we didn't know anyone. We only knew Matt. And I thought, we're going to arrive at this festival and we're not going to know anyone. So we did like this little cocktail party the night before. And that's where we met Joe Looney, we met Jason Rosenstein, we met some Pepe people that came, and by the time we got the Rare Art Labs guys, by the time we got to the festival the next day, we already had made friends. And it went really well. And also was press. And also that's the day that the Homer Pepe originally sold for $39,000, which was absolutely, completely insane at the time. I will never forget standing next to Matt Hall and looking at him look at the auction. It was the funniest thing that, so we have many, many of these meetups and anecdotes of being a community that even platforms that you could consider to be rivals in some way, it's always been about like helping with the tech and being really collegial. And I think it's important for people to know that. Please interrupt.
Hey.
Where are you?
Yes.
Here.
Sorry, my internet is not very reliable, so sorry to be late.
Well, it's been kind of like a very informal chat.
All right.
I wonder if any of the artists want to, like like Mox, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with the Creeps? Or with, like, for instance, Mox and Jason can talk about how they became friends through this collection.
Yeah, it was really weird because I didn't really understand what we were doing back then when you told us to download MetaMask and we were we were getting paid in Ether and all that stuff. I think all the artists were like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. And then it came the interview with Jason that it was really cool for my crypto career because it has opened me a lot of doors. Yeah. And yeah.
What interview was that? Because I know that Jason used your Creep in the first article you wrote, right, Jason? That was the first NFT that you bought. But did you interview Mox?
I did, yeah. So there's an interview with Mox, and then so my very first day, I didn't know anything about blockchain either, but it didn't keep me from writing an article about that announcement. Here. I was like, the blockchain art market's here after 2 hours of walking around. I bought 2 crypto kitties. I sent one to Coinbase, which made it disappear forever, the famous limoncello story.
Oh my God, that is the funniest story.
And I was like, okay, this is a thing, but probably not a thing for me. And then I went to DADA and I bought what I call Artie the Art Gnome, which is Mohara's work, and I bought it because I loved it. Like I was like, oh, this is great. Like I love all kinds of art, not just famous or well-known art, which is now these works are becoming famous and well-known, which is great. But I really just truly liked that work and bought it. But the thing that clicked, I bought it, and then I got a tweet from Mohara saying thank you, and like, what's up? How's it going? You know, and I was like, whoa, this is gonna be like magic. This is the future, right? So instead of having this weird, isolated go into a gallery where you don't feel comfortable and you don't really talk to the artist or whatever, like for I think it was like the price of a cup of coffee at Starbucks, I bought an artwork that I loved and built a friendship with Mox that's lasted like 4 years now, right? So I think that and that whole when that whole thing clicked for me, with DADA on that very first purchase, that's when I switched from thinking like, this is like a novelty thing like cats and collectibles or whatever, to thinking like this is probably the future of art, and in a good way, right? Because there are artists and collectors all around the world who aren't happy with the current system. And for me, it's I love art, obviously, but it's never just been about the art. It's been about wanting to have the relationship with creative people all around the world. And when Mox reached out and we kind of formed that friendship or that relationship, I got really excited. But I think Mox, I'm trying to remember when we did the interview. It was pretty shortly after I think I wrote that first article and was just excited to try to use whatever little platform I had at the time to try to get some more exposure. But there are a bunch of DADA artists that I have in my collection that I'm proud to have and always have been, and try to look out for them when I can. And they've always been great friends. So really grateful to Judy and Bea for opening up the opportunity to meet all of these awesome people that I consider. I mean, honestly, I can kind of consider them like family. I feel like I have family all around the world.
No, thank you. I just want to go back to your limoncello story. That is funniest thing. So Christie's organized the first Art and Tech Summit in, when was that? 2018?
July
And,
18, yeah.
July 2018. So they invited Jason to moderate. I think Matt and John were there, and we were there. We were at this panel with the Rare Art Labs guy and Masha from Ascribe. And I mean, this is Christie's, which is like a 250-year-old auction house, and the audience is just like all art, like there's art appraisers and art, professionals in the fine art world and people from museums and, all the like old school art stuff. And Jason is moderating this panel, and we all look like these renegades, right? Like, I don't know. But he starts telling this story to this audience of insurers and appraisers, and I mean, imagine people who are thinking of Freeports and people who deal with art that is millions and millions and millions of dollars. And Jason is telling this story about how, like, he sent his limoncello Crypto Kitty, which is some digital cat, to some address, and it got lost. And I mean, we just were joking it up. We thought it was the funniest thing. The panel is laughing, and you could hear the silence in the room. Like, I looked out into the audience, and it was appalled. They were appalled. They were like, who are these people? What is a disappearing cat? Like, how? I mean, can you imagine that you're telling art people that you send some art and it disappears and it's never going to be found? There's no password to recover. I mean, it was that kind of culture shock. It was so funny.
And it's funny to me to watch them all rediscover it, right? The art world, like the fashion world, really doesn't like to go back to something they thought they already explored, right? Because they feel like they need a new thing every year to sell or whatever. And I think when this all started getting big again, end of last year, beginning of this year, there was some hesitation because they were like, "Oh, blockchain. We checked that box. We did that in 2018 or whatever, right?" And then when it got bigger and bigger, they started saying, "Oh, well, none of this stuff really matters, and this is irrelevant." And then when it got so big that they would become irrelevant if they didn't weigh in, you're now starting to see them be like, "Yeah, I see what's going on here," or whatever. But yeah, I remember, Judy, we looked out over the crowd. I think that was when I gave away the super rare cards too that had.
Oh my god!
And I told them all. I said, "Look, this artist is amazing. You should like save your card. If you're not going to save your card, let me know, and I'll like buy it from you." And they all like ended up in the trash or whatever, which is another funny story. But I mean, look, art. art movements have always come from the bottom up. Any successful, meaningful art movement, and Christie's is a business, and nice to have us there. But
Yes,
they're
yes.
they're not in the business of defining culture. That always happens from the bottom up, and
Right.
we tried to help them out, and it took a while, and maybe they're coming around now.
I think that it was. I have to give them and like who Richard Anthrop at the time. I thought it was amazing that they even had this summit. But I remember, people were they were interested, of course, in the provenance and authenticity and all their problems that they have with fakes and money laundering and all of that stuff. So that was kind of like the focus in a way. But I will always give them credit for doing this festival.
Hold on.
Also,
one thing. I don't know if Elliot is here because
he would be wonderful.
yeah, because he is a collector of Creeps and Weirdos, and he told me he might come today.
Elliot Safra?
Yeah. So, yeah, he and Anne organized the Christie's thing, and they would be good if he's here to hear from him. But I guess
So we were joking. What I wanted to say is that at the time when we explained blockchain to them, they could kind of see like the provenance thing, but they were absolutely hysterically obsessed about GDPR, which is like the because blockchain is immutable, and it's like, what are we going to do with GDPR? That was like their main obsession. But I also remember, and this is to me very interesting, because once somebody hits the $70 million mark selling a crypto art, or an $8 million selling a CryptoPunk, all of a sudden people who completely dismissed this as having no value whatsoever, things change, right? So I remember that the very last panel at that day was a number of very important people from the art world, like curators from the Serpentine Gallery and somebody from the Victoria and Albert Museum, and important people. And their takeaway was, this is bullshit. I mean, pretty much it's like their takeaway was, that art, it's not gonna have value. Maybe a little bit of the provenance. So, moral of the story: things change, and I think that those of us who have been in the space, believing in the possibilities of the medium, not only really and DADA, and I think Bea can take it from here. We believe in the possibilities of blockchain not only as a way to transact digital content. We really believed it in a way to decentralize, democratize, and completely create a whole new system that would be completely different for artists. You want to run with it?
Well, I don't know. You spoke about our actual beginning into the
Yes,
Creeps and
I
Weirdos?
did a little bit of a background history.
Okay. Yeah. So for us, we started on blockchain early in the spring of 2017. I started reading about decentralized applications, and that's the reason why we got into it. And it was never about crypto art. That wasn't the main thing. It was always about the tokens economies that were possible. And in the meantime, we went into, I remember reading about rare peppers, which was quite incredible at the time. It was really the first time and that was probably April 2018, the first time that it really became, potential, not only to create these decentralized applications and communities, but also really focus on digital art. And so
Not 18 though.
17,
18.
yeah, April 17, and then we went into Ethereum because at the time it was Counterparty, where everything was happening. But we went into Ethereum because they had the first Ethereum Summit in May of 2017, and I went there and it blew my mind. And from there, it just took us, one day to really go full in, and without knowing anything we were doing. So as we were trying to figure out blockchain, and at that time, because it was so, like, there was not really anybody doing anything, everybody who was doing something will talk to you. And so we talked to everyone, We talked to people who were doing rare purpose. We talked to people who were doing like the big infrastructure things. We talked to a scribe. We talked to everyone we could. And then all of a sudden I saw the CryptoPunks thing and immediately contacted John. And John, it's funny because I contacted him through LinkedIn, and you can see the time in which I sent the message, and he responded in 2 minutes. Because at the time, everybody wanted to talk about it, right? Like nobody. So we did Abraham can talk about the smart contracts and all of that. We used their contracts, we manipulated them a little bit because they didn't have editions, and we wanted to have editions. At the time, the main thing really was, so that you can imagine the mindset, the main thing was, will people feel that they own this digital art? Because we knew that people were buying punks, and I think Judith is probably one of the very, very earlier collectors of crypto art ever. There were some people buying them. There was a bit of secondary markets already, but will really people feel that they own these things? Will they buy them feeling like they own this art? And so that became quickly when we launched very obvious. As soon as you got one Creeps&Weirdos, people will feel that they own it. The next question was, what do I do with it? And we had no answer to that, and probably still nobody has any answer to that. But at the time, the feeling that this was going to be something revolutionary was very obvious. We just didn't know who was doing what and what was going to happen with it. So when I think about it in terms of the context, the historical context, and the importance of the Creeps&Weirdos for us, for DADA, because we have a very long history before and after that, and we have so many conversations that are important, and so many conversations that were part of many presentations after that, because when we became the center of the crypto art movement, along with the Rare Peppers and the CryptoPunks, and you can see these conversations everywhere in the Serial Summit, in all these different places. But the Creeps&Weirdos were, looking back, it's like they were really the first instance of a decentralized marketplace. That it was not trading cards, that it was not a game, that it was not a collectible, that it was not a project in itself, but artists really tokenizing their art and put it in a decentralized marketing, which they will actually get, with the contracts, they will actually get their money without us having to do anything and all that. And it was also the first time that smart contracts were coding royalties into, we didn't know that, we just did it, right? Like, you don't think about being the first of anything, you just going with the flow and doing things. And it was probably, Curious Cards, I think they started with 7 artists, and they were doing cards with artists. So they are the first really to do anything in the Ethereum blockchain. But I think at the time, I remember, even by the summer, I'm talking about August, I think Curious Card was already abandoned as a project. Like, you couldn't really do anything there. I wanted to post things as an artist, I wanted to collect, and you couldn't really do anything. And so I think the significance also of the Creeps&Weirdos is that this community is alive, and we have done so many things after that. It's not just a one-off project that happened and was abandoned or was successful, but was that one thing. This is a living thing. And so I think when you think about the artists, for instance, like Mox, then some of them are already crypto artists. Some of them are pretty successful crypto artists, like Javier and Mojarra and Maria. And, they all of that value to the collection, obviously, and everything that we did after when we did a conversation at the Tate Museum, which are the kind of things that the market value. All of that is, you have a lot of the same artists from the Creeps and Weirdos in that conversation at Tate, and I think we every time that we do things, it's just adding to that value. And I will say that, I mean, I don't want to go too deep into the invisible economy if people are not interested. If they are, we can definitely talk about it. But the invisible economy, which is the whole thing why we got into the space 4 years ago, is a culmination of that journey, really going deep into how do we build a decentralized community in which art is not commodified, financialized, and artists can live doing art without having to produce anything, without having to worry about the market, but at the same time in which collectors can collect for love, for emotional connection with their art, and they don't have to sell it. They actually can keep it and have an exit through the token. And so we end up coming up with a whole new socioeconomic system that we're about to implement and we're really proud of. And it's funny to me that people will think that DADA is a failed project or it's a one-off project that just happened when we actually what we did was to focus deep into this economy instead of just selling things and building a marketplace back then. I felt like if we were ahead back then for years, now we're ahead many years even from crypto art. And so I think for people who have the market mentality, one of the things about the Creeps and Weirdos is that not only they were, in 2017, one of the first, but also we're not issuing, we never issued too many pieces of art. We never really sold. We just did experiments here and there, and they were very intentional and very specific. Like Animalia was a very specific experiment we did at the Rare Art Fest 2. Desk Control was a very specific experiment we did when we did a presentation at NFT New York City, the first one. We did one in the Radical Exchange. And so we're not issuing any more than what is already out. And in that sense, if the market values scarcity, we're really going to have our own economy. And there's only very few instances of DADA work that are going to be out in the market. And I think that gives even more market value, quote unquote, to the Creeps and Weirdos since they were the first. Yes, somebody wanted to say anything?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, who is speaking?
Somebody named Sharon.
Oh, hi, Sharon.
Hi, Julie. Hi, everybody. It's funny, I'm listening to Bea talk, and you used the word, three of my favorites word, blew my mind, right? Which is what happened to you in Ethereal Summit in 2017. Mm-hmm. And it just, like, you took that, blew my mind, and you just passed it on to me, is what it feels like. I'm sure you passed it on to a lot of people, but I first met you guys at that meetup at Rise, New York.
Yeah. That was November, either late November. I think it was late
November of 2017. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's when it was. You just it was like you were graduating or whatever the correct word might be from that incubator, I think, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, it was the Founder Institute was doing an event for their graduates, and they invited us to present, and that's when we presented them.
Mm-hmm. And I just wandered in because it's a meetup, and I was, I went to a meetup the day before. It was supposed to be a blockchain meetup, and it was just a drinking party at some bar. Nobody, it was ridiculous. And then I went to this thing, and I saw you, and I was like, my God. It was just, this is kind of one of those life-changing moments.
Oh.
Totally. Just blew my mind. And, I just went right up to you guys afterwards. And then we all went to a bar afterwards. It was a thing. And I was like, okay, I'm doing a videotape. That's it. We got to do something. And you said, okay, come in I think it was like 2 days later. You said, come to, we're presenting this at the New Art Academy.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so I just took a video camera and I showed up. And it was awful because as soon as you started doing the presentation, they turned the lights off. So I couldn't videotape anything except the projector, right? Whatever was being screened. But I still have some good, good B-roll is what we call it, and the audio and all kinds of good stuff. But yeah, and then after that, you said, come to the Rare Arts Festival.
Yeah.
You gave me this look where I was just kind of like, I don't know, the way I interpreted it was like, if you don't come, you're an idiot. And so that was it. And then, so it was all like within a week or 2 weeks, whatever it was, or a month. I don't know. I can look back on my calendar. And then Rare Arts was just insane. And that's when I saw CryptoPunks. And I was like, this is, this story has to be told. It's amazing. And it hit me on every level, on like the artistic level, the geeky, nerdy tech level, and the storytelling level. And both of you, like those two projects, DADA and CryptoPunks, was like a two-headed monster for me. And it was so different, and it seemed to span at least 180 degrees, the spectrum.
I have to say that, like, for people, Sharon at the time, to feel that this was worth documenting, so he started actually interviewing projects. He interviewed Matt and John, he interviewed Bea, interviewed Kevin McCoy, and so.
But for a while, no?
Mr. Songade, don't forget him.
Yeah, and historic footage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That he started doing that for consistently. So you have some pretty amazing footage, I think.
I do. I have a lot of. Somebody told me you have interview zero. Like if you look at the interviews,
yeah.
I've got all these zero interviews, and nobody was interested at the time, and but I think people are going to be much more interested now, and but yeah, that was just I was always kind of upset that you guys were just, it felt like you're being overlooked and nobody was appreciating it.
Yeah, but
CryptoPunks was selling millions of dollars, literally, and it just wasn't balanced. So I'm really glad, obviously.
But
because let me.
The thing is that we didn't go for that. We deliberately, we could have done that, and we deliberately, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's intentional. It's interesting because people think, like some people, I remember reading in the Discord this week, that some people were saying, well, there is no value if there is no demand, if we don't, buy them, there is no value. Well, the value is there, whether there is demand or is no demand, or whether it's in the market or it's not in the market. The value is always going to be there, and we knew it. So we just wanted to really focus on what was important to us, which was the economy. And to me, it's like, well, you could say that we missed, like some people thought, well, you're missing your first movers, because we, at some point, at that time between end of 2017, especially in the beginning of 2018, in the beginning of 2018, there is no super rare, there is no OpenSea really yet, although OpenSea was starting with the CryptoKitties and stuff, but nothing really started happening until like April of 2018. So all that time, we're the first ones. We have a community, huge community already. We have already a platform working. We have all this. We have consensus backing us. And for everyone, we were the ones that were going to, quote unquote, dominate the market. But that's not what we were about. So we saw all the speculation that happened with the CryptoKitties and then the Rare Pepes immediately, and we said, well, this is not what we should do. What we should do is to really focus on the economy. So it's interesting that people think that because we actually didn't want to participate in the market, that we were being overlooked, and we were being overlooked by the press and all of that because there were no prices to report, right? But it's interesting because for us, we just see that we are so far ahead because we were able to do all that work quietly when everybody was trying to sell stuff. And so, so it's for me, it's like we'll see, just like now that the world is catching up finally with everything that we've been doing, not just us, but all of us in the crypto art space. it's going to take some years because before people catch up to what we're doing to the invisible economy, and then maybe they will understand.
Yeah, I also wanted to say that it's true that between experiments we did some really interesting stuff. I don't know why I'm like.
There's two of you.
Yeah, that's weird. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, for instance, we did a no. That was the first time that people were bidding on a live drawing performance. They were bidding on art that was being created at the moment. So they didn't know exactly what was going to be the end result, but we had artists creating art live, and people were bidding on also the first time that this kind of structure for an auction, which was a combination of English and Dutch auction. And it was also the first time that actually towards the end of the auction, two collectors were bidding against each other. And one of them was so inspired by seeing the art being created in real time and by this kind of combination auction that he proposed to the other collector, who happens to be Simon de la Rouvière, to actually split the art between the two of them, but in a way to co-own the art, not by you get half of the drawings and I get half of the drawings, but actually to both bid to like the last prize and then co-own that artwork.
The entire
so
conversation.
They co-own it. They both co-own that conversation, which is called Sight Unseen.
Yeah. And even then,
artist who speaks Spanish called Perrodrillo.
And even then, we had to figure out even how to do a smart contract. This is March 2019 now, and we're still having to figure out how to do a contract in which they can both have the entire conversation in one wallet, because it wasn't possible at the time. And so when there's so many instances of things that we have done that way, that it's very...
Well, there's also...
Yeah.
What about the one at Ethereum... Ethereal Summit 2019.
Oh yeah,
the objects. Everybody.
Yeah.
And I came the night before, I remember, and I videotaped the apartment, all the objects, and you were putting it together. So I have that footage too.
Yeah. Judy, you wanna
everybody?
Yeah, let me. Yeah. Yes, the Soul in the Machine was this beautiful conversation that we did, where you know how many artists, and many of them are
19. 19, including Jason, actually. Jason was part of the artist.
Jason was part of it, because Jason is a really good on his own right. And what we had them is what they were drawing for one day live, like on a kind of a relay, so that they would coincide with the moment that the work was going to be auctioned, and we were showing them doing the drawings live the entire day. But also what we did is that we attached a physical piece to it. We had artists in Kenya, in Croatia, in the United States, in Chile, in Spain, all over the place. And we asked them to send Mexico a memento of what this piece meant to them. So we coordinated them sending us these very personal objects.
Physical objects.
Physical objects through the mail, and then we created almost Joseph Cornell kind of box, like this beautiful collage box that was going to be auctioned together with the Soul in the Machine conversation, which is absolutely spectacularly beautiful.
That could be just. I'm sorry. That could be an amazing feature, like a movie.
But to one of the things that happened, and I think that it's worth mentioning, is that because we have been around the block, we have seen how there are, hills and valleys in the crypto craze, right? So when crypto goes up, everybody is interested, and they buy a crypto kitty for $300,000, and they buy, I don't want to say, but they buy some art for a gazillion dollars. But the moment Bitcoin falls and the moment it falls, no one wants to touch anything. So that auction, that was the second auction of the Ethereum Summit that they ever did, The first one was a huge success because everybody was pumped and people were paying prices, blah, blah, blah. The second time there was a crypto winter or however you want to call it, and that auction was the saddest, the saddest, most pathetic. I mean, some people sold, people like Poldi sold, but like for very cheap, like, no one was bidding with any kind of enthusiasm. And for me, it was a really interesting kind of corrective and a very kind of reality check that told me, told us, this is kind of pegged to the fortunes of cryptocurrency, and it's going to happen again. Like we are now in some like kind of crazy boom, and if it falls back again and many people leave, I know that those of you who are here probably will remain. Hopefully, we have converted many of you into art lovers from DADA. But we're going to continue doing what we're because we're whatever.
So let me give a context to that, because this is that Ethereal Summit was June 2019, and some of you might have bought Desk Control. Desk Control was issued at the New York NFT New York City
NFT NYC.
And NFT NYC in February 2019, the first one they did. And at that time, we have put the experiment was what happens if we just put a conversation there with nothing, just one price, set price, and see what happens. And the price we thought it shouldn't be too cheap, but too expensive either. So we put it at 1.5 ETH, which at the time was $100. And I remember that it didn't sold because
150.
No, it was 1.5 ETH equal $100. And at that time, people thought that it was way too expensive. I remember Judy saying it should be $50. I remember Jason Bailey saying it should be $20. Why is it so expensive? And they didn't sell. They sold them. It was like we sold, I think, only 4. And fast forward, we're in May 2019. In the Ethereal Summit, the auction goes really bad. A couple of weeks later is the Rare Art Fest 2, and there's no collectors. And I remember one of the things that Jason was saying is like, we really need collectors, because this is an amazing community of all of us artists and developers, but there is no people buying. And so that is the atmosphere. Even 2 years later, after the Creeps&Weirdos came out and the CryptoPunks came out, 2 years later, we're still in a place in which there is no demand. And by the time that we did the Tate, which was November 2019, the market started to pick up, and we started seeing what we know now to be the bull run that it is. But it was, years of not having any demand, which didn't mean that these projects weren't, and these artists and this art were valuable. It's just that psychologically, we just come a long way in terms of valuing art and NFTs.
I remember when people were really concerned that the very, very, very was kind of like a mindset shift, because people really couldn't understand what to do with these NFTs, because you couldn't hang them on a wall, if you could print them. And now it seems to be completely irrelevant. Right. But at the time, it was really a preoccupation that people had.
By the way, you brought this up earlier. Curio Cards is coming back. Pretty sure they're wrapping everything up as ERC 721s. So,
good.
Yeah, good for them, because I remember we talked to Travis, who was behind the Curious Cards back then, and I wanted him, because we helped the Rare Labs people organize the Rare Fest. So we were bringing people. We brought Decentraland. We brought the people that we already had talked to, and so to the festival. And I remember contacting Travis and telling him, "There's this festival. You should come." They were in San Francisco, and for some reason, I don't know why, he didn't really took the opportunity. But he did come to the Rare Fest. They didn't present but they did come. And I just have this, I don't know, I have the feeling that it was really abandoned at the time, and even then they were not that. I don't know what happened, but they should have been.
I'm glad they're coming back.
There's a funny moment, actually. I mean, not only was he there, but towards the end of Matt Hall's presentation of CryptoPunks, Matt was saying something. I think he was something, and Matt was saying, so we're we were one, like, I think he was saying we were the first Ethereum collectible, and then Travis raised his hand, like he had the mic. It was, people were passing the mic around for Q&A, and he's like, actually, I think we beat you to it. And he's like, yeah, we launched this. He's like, you can look at the date, the smart contract. And Matt was like, oh, great, my day's just getting worse, sadder and sadder, or something like that. It was really funny. Yeah, and it's interesting. It's like, good for them, good for them to revive that project.
Of course,
Yeah, Bear actually kind of mentioned them.
Well,
I get some takes back and forth.
But also, we have been adamant, Bear is adamant, like to give credit to the people who were before us.
Yeah.
And so it gets lost. So people, Joe Looney and the Peppers get lost. Like people don't give them enough credit, and Curio Cards don't get enough credit. So we've tried to kind of set the record straight about, because it's important to
well, it's more the
history. It's only 4 years old, and people already.
But even back then, there were so many people that came through CryptoKitties that for people everything started with CryptoKitties, and so it's like you like history forgets this project so easily, and I know Jason has been really pushing for people to understand the importance of Rare Peppers, because it really did it all back then. And so to really, they need to be part of the history, not just because they were the first or we were the first or whoever was the first, but because that is the importance. Like, that's when things were rough. That's when things were uncertain. By the time CryptoKitty came, like, we all knew already that this was a thing. And so, they didn't really did any innovation other than wrap the non-fungible token and call it a standard. Everything else was a marketing thing with them. And so I think it's very important to understand the distinctions of who were actually innovating, experimenting, and really pushing the space forward in terms of what could be done with the technology.
Yeah, even like, for instance, with the kitties, as some of you also found out, because you are incredible detectives, the new collectors. We did this experiment with kitty hats, which were these tokens that were accessories to the CryptoKitties, and like you could buy your cat a tattoo or a hat, and then we thought, well, why couldn't you buy art for your cat? And so we actually issued this collection of that, which is this beautiful, beautiful collection called Pop Art. Again, many of the artists who participated in that collection are here today, which is like masterpieces of art history in kind of like day-glow colors. And at the time, I remember telling Bea, I hope we're not cannibalizing this amazing collection, because this collection is really super important. But we wanted to experiment, and we were really excited to see, like, for instance, the idea that you can layer tokens, and the attribution and the distribution of everything is automatic. And so we did this really cute, we issued the collection so that people who had CryptoKitties could buy their cat some art.
So I love the collection. I thought it was great.
I wonder if there is any question from our new collectors. Yeah. And our old collectors too.
Yeah, maybe I would like to say something.
Yes, Judith.
Yeah. It's again about the current developments in the market, which I found quite disturbing. When you have a look at what was happening 2 or 3 weeks ago, and what was happening to the DADA art as well, it simply seemed to be totally crazy, and all these people hunting for the latest hype and the earliest projects. It was just kind of wrong, I guess. It felt very, very wrong. And it also felt to me like kind of a herd of locusts gazing everything they can get hold of. And this development will not continue, I guess. It's already 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it even seems to kind of ebbing away again. I don't know if it's just my feeling or if you have made the same experience. Just a question.
I will let collectors chime in.
Hi, this is Adam. Until now, I'm a fan. I'm not a collector yet because I had the fear, uncertainty, and doubt during the crazy buying. But I want to ask if in the physical art, the old world art, are people so open about trying to make a quick few $1,000s on your art? Because okay, I get it. It's nice if it's nice hobby and making money. Okay, some people are so open about. Come on, quickly! You have to allow me to sell this and make money. Didn't expect them to be open about it.
So,
can I just say something?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be the same thing, but one of the things I find really interesting, I think that we have found to some a bit of disappointment that many of the platforms in crypto art, because they have followed this crazy, like this completely open free market kind of thing, but basically have replicated what happens in the actual art market, where there's a lot of speculation but there's a difference, because it's a difference in scale, it's a difference in price. But I also believe that the fact that we live digitally and in social media makes for a very kind of different community. In the real art, not the real, or in the traditional art world, you have a bunch of gatekeepers and all this exclusivity and elitism and curators and galleries and people who kind of buffer the interactions, for better or for worse, with artists. One of the good things about this is that, for instance, what Jason was saying, that he immediately got connected to the artist and to Mocarra, and they became friends, and this peer-to-peer thing is very unique to crypto, and it's wonderful. At the same time, in digital art, in the digital realm and in social media, where people use pseudonyms, where you don't have a face-to-face interaction, people feel free to be abusive, and it's really, it can be kind of really, because it's possible, because it's immediate, it's automatic. So they're two very different, I believe, different realms, although I think that some of the motivations are the same. Some collectors are motivated because they love art, because they champion artists, like collectors like Jason, for instance, or Judith S., and others, because they really feel, they have a love and passion for art, and others are more speculators and less collectors. Leah?
Yeah, so I will pass it to Jason, because we actually had a little interaction about that on Twitter, and Jason, if you want to talk about it. But I want to just talk about specifically what happened to the Creeps&Weirdos, and for us, it's very clear, we're really, really anti-speculation. And everything that we are doing with our community in terms of the invisible economy is actually an economy in which speculation doesn't exist. It's not valued. It doesn't have any value, and so it doesn't. I don't think that we will see any kind of speculation in our economy, and that has been a big fight for us. But it's interesting that we have never been ideological. People think that that I might be a Marxist or something like that. I have never read Marx in my life. We all have our different ways of looking at life. I'm an anarchist, but most people, I don't think, in the DADA community or the invisible economy will define themselves as that. And so we go through what feels right within our community, within DADA and our specific environment. And in that sense, even though we are completely 100% against speculation, what happened here, because it just happened and we had to deal with it, even though we didn't want to sell them, we understood that once you have found so many people buying this art, that they're looking to resell it, and a lot of these people maybe put a lot of all their money in this opportunity, and they need liquidity. And so we're not talking about wealth, because the thing is that in this market, unless you have wealth, unless you have a lot of money, you can't hold art. You have to resell it if you're trying to, if you're a small collector, let's say. And so understanding that for us was okay. So we have to help. We have to do something so that our contracts work, so they can resell. And of course, if the Creeps and Weirdos are gonna resell, because they are probably gonna be valued a lot of money, we have to make sure that some of that comes back to our artists, of course, because that is part of who we are. But at the same time, it wasn't that we were gonna say like, no, we're just not gonna do it. Nobody can resell it. We didn't sell it to you, and now we'll do whatever, figure it out. It was more like, wow, there's some people here that may have put a lot of money into this, and they need to sell it. So we should help out to do that for them. Because at the end, for us, it's about the small people. It's about really the openness of this space. It's about being able, for everyone to participate in this. And unless you're a big whale with tons of crypto, it's becoming more and more difficult to actually participate in this. So I understand the hunting of early projects also as a way of getting early, instead of the whales just snapping everything.
Yes, that's one point, I guess. Another point is that the market is mixing very much at the moment. So you have so many different people coming from so different spaces. You have the artists, you have the developers, you have the people coming from the money markets, and you have also very much people who are new in the space. I discovered, I observed the CryptoPunks Discord chats some weeks ago, and when people were rushing from one project to another, suddenly so many new people were in the space who didn't even know how to buy ETH, how to set up MetaMask, how to access the blockchain. It was totally new.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, you had so many different people in one space, and nobody didn't actually know how to deal with this situation. And this specific CryptoPunks Discord situation is the situation we have currently in the blockchain NFT area, for space.
Yes.
So it's mixing up, and it needs a lot of transparency, and it might be necessary to define aims and goals very clearly and make it accessible for so many new people. And I guess that's one of the big challenges right now, which is affecting DADA as well, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we're here, right? Immediately, we are happy doing what we're doing, all of us, Sparrow, Judy, myself. We didn't need to spend so much time in this new Discord. If we just thought about it as well, markets will figure it out. What we wanted was to actually try to be some kind of not. We don't want to moderate. We don't. It's not about that or control even. What we want to do is to see, can we rule out, can we take the toxicity that these things produce, could we neutralize that in a way that is actually something that is enjoyable for everyone and valuable for everyone? And can we identify the people who will be great collectors in our economy, who are actually looking for an alternative that is not what there is out there, and try to help out as much as we can. But our mentality was never, well, let's sell more, or let's control so that they don't sell. In either way, our mentality has always been, okay, so we know that there's a lot of people out there that is getting into the ecosystem, and a lot of people have been there for years who are not so happy about how things are developing. Can we serve as a sort of a space for those who need something different? I don't know, Sparrow, if you wanna jump in. Yeah, go ahead, Judith.
Yeah, I totally agree. Not at least because I'm following your your project since many years now. But what maybe it was not clear what I wanted to say. It's just a big issue for the whole market, not especially for DADA, who is doing it better than many other projects, I guess. It's a general thing because the space is opening up very quickly and very broadly.
But that is the essence of the market, that nobody can do anything about it. Go ahead, Aspire.
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly that, right? And that is the market. And that is the way, whenever you have a market, that the market will behave because the incentives are set up for that to happen. The only way for that not to happen is to not have market incentives the way that they're structured. So it shouldn't be a surprise that this system produces those results and all of the other stuff that we see, in the real world, as well as what we see in crypto art now.
So it's better for us, we understood it quickly. It's like, we're not gonna fight against the market. It's okay. Let's just reassure people, the Creeps and Weirdos are part of the market, and you can do whatever you want with them, which is the market rules. But at the same time, not try to control that either. Not try to be in opposition to it, because it just doesn't make sense. It's just a lot of energy wasted on something that nobody can control.
It's control, and it's also, we're not trying to promote this either, right? Because, like Bea said, our attention and our focus and our energy is on creating this new system. So the Creeps and Weirdos were released to the market a long time ago, and so they are part of that world. For me, it just seems really logical that we don't mix those two worlds together, because we know that we don't want those sorts of results in the invisible economy. In fact, the invisible economy is designed to, produce the opposite results: more equality, more fairness, more cooperation, more creativity, less mediocrity. So enabling people to experiment more, producing that environment.
And that's good for the collectors as well. One of the things we want to do is to create for collectors an experience that is going to be super unique, just as the experience of drawing in DADA is unique for artists.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I want to mention that if you see, we have artists, if you see the watch stream thing, you can actually see some of our artists are drawing live right now.
Mm-hmm.
You can choose to see any of the streams. It's a little present for you that we wanted to have as a surprise.
Yes.
But yeah, so it's not just like anticipation. No, it's like we want to nourish and nurture the right kind of collectors and the right kind of interactions between collectors and artists. And
I wouldn't even say that there is no right or wrong kind of collectors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like there's no right or wrong kind of artists. There are just different motivations and different actions. And what we've done in designing the invisible economy is we have made an environment where collectors who want to buy and sell very quickly to make a profit don't have any incentive to participate, because that's not an incentive that's available in that environment. Current markets and every other platform that's out there has that incentive. So, have at it. OpenSea's full of marketplaces like that. The environment outside of the invisible economy is made for you. The environment inside the invisible economy is made for people who may not want that incentive or may not be motivated by those same things. And at the moment, until we implement and actually get the invisible economy going, there's really no place for those other people. Don't, have a place where they can express their own intrinsic motivations, because everything else is very focused on one metric, which is only the price.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I
but
wanted
the
to.
good news is that you can have both. It's like not, like you can toggle. They can come and experiment something completely different, and then see how that compares to what exists.
I wanted to call out to Igor because I see that Igor is here, Igor Lilik. And Igor, and for those of you who may not know, he was the guy behind Celarius, and which is one of the coolest projects ever thought out in blockchain. And Igor was a very early collector of Creeps&Weirdos, and you've probably been in the space for a long time. So you wanna give us your thoughts on the space and.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Igor.
I was just lurking and listening. So I've been in the. I'm ex-Consensus, so I joined Consensus the day after the Genesis block for Ethereum. So it kind of was a part of the Ethereum journey the whole time, and certainly it's fascinating to watch the NFT space. I do think there's definitely some speculation that's unsavory and all these kinds of things, but I do, on the plus side of what's happening right now, I think it's amazing that a whole cohort of artists is now getting access to this technology. I think like one of the scary thoughts of crypto is that it just becomes DeFi and DeFi bros and degenerates and all this stuff, and really becomes a place where only that kind of culture survives. And so, the thought that other creative forces can kind of like come in and see traction and see adoption, I think is great. And then, one of the things that I hope happens is all of the artists, all of the creators that are seeing, the upside word in this current market, they turn that into more creative potential and kind of there's a ripple effect that goes on, and so I'm super excited to see what happens when some of these up and coming NFT artists that are making an income for potentially the first time, then turn that into future investments in this space, either working to solve some of the problems that are emerging, or just creating new art. That's what I'm excited for, and my day-to-day blockchain usage gets so much more interesting when half of the day I'm looking at art. Before I was just looking at spreadsheets and numbers, and now I get to look at all this mind-bending art as well. So definitely negatives. I think we all know some of the negatives that need to be worked out and kind of figured out, but I'm excited for the positives. I've always been kind of an optimistic person, and so thanks. I was just lurking. Nice to see you.
It's so
hear
great
you guys.
to see you.
Thank you so
it's
much.
interesting you say that when Chris is in London, that I said, like, it's really interesting to be in an emerging space, in a very new space. I had never experienced that before. I come from advertising, which, even though it's like 300 years old, it rancid from the beginning. And this, like, being in a super early, it's a completely different dynamic. And I remember thinking, when we used to go to all these different meetups, and there were always this weird mix of characters, like Igor is saying, like artists and people who I don't know where they came from, or people who were very DeFi and trying to understand the space. And it felt like, I said at the time, that it felt like a cross between the Renaissance, all the projects and the objects and the people doing the innovation in there, and all of us are colleagues, trying to solve different problems, and just, all this incredible burst of creativity and innovation. And the Wild West was, like the stampede of like locust or like people who were really looking to do like quick talk, it was also the time of the ICOs, and it was just crazy. So I think that it'll kind of always have this tension, but I do believe, as we even saw a little bit in our own Discord chat, that art can neutralize those. I think it can kind of neutralize the worst tendencies. It has a power that gets people for a moment to forget all the spreadsheet stuff and all the ways you can game the system and all of that stuff, and really it talks to you, and I feel also optimistic that we will prevail in that sense.
Yeah, I can add something just quickly. Like, I think it also has to be conscientious, right? Like, obviously COVID, and we don't get to see everyone, but prior to COVID, the Ethereum community, you could call it from the top down or from the bottom up, made it a goal, like, we want an open culture. We want to invite different people, and that was part of the core fabric of Ethereum. I hope it remains part of the core fabric of Ethereum to continually, like, put in the extra effort to be inclusive and to reach out and to not have a closed perspective of who this technology is for, or what the use cases of this technology are about. I think having that open mindset really helps to encourage that, and putting it as in front, not as a app of the conversation, but as a part of the technology and a part of the community. Is like, yes, we want the creeps and weirdos, the interesting people with off the wall ideas to come and experiment, and maybe find something out, find something new, or find someone new, that those two people coming together are actually creating something innovative. And so I think it has to be a part of the fiber of the culture as well. Otherwise,
totally agree. Like, I think everyone everyone wants like the cumbersomeness of the technology, and when people slowly kind of start getting it, I see a future where like people are going to be maybe NFTizing everything, personally. Like it will be something that will be ubiquitous, hopefully, and there's no limit or no gatekeeping to that.
But I want to
So
say, oh yeah, well, I was going to say that for what Igor was saying, that you and Ilan are the perfect example of artists who came to do art and ended up being collectors of a lot of artists, but also helping develop and being very involved in many different projects in the visual economy, especially, but in tons of other projects if you want to talk about it.
Sorry, was that one for me?
Oh no, that was for Sparrow and Ilan. I would say that they,
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, they are the kind of artists that you're talking about.
Oh, so I was just going to tack on to the end of what Igor said. If this space is really about innovation, then we should be seeing OpenSea honoring the innovation of the royalties in our contract, right? I mean, if that's what we want to see, right, is encouraging innovation in this space, and we can't allow the homogeneity and the we're just going to chase after the next big revenue generating stream for us, which is what you see, I think, in most of the platforms that have come online in the last few years. So yes, it would be really nice if the Ethereum ecosystem put its effort where its ethos says that it is, and all of the crypto art platforms say that they're doing good for artists, and yet a lot of the artists that I've been talking to really don't feel like the platforms as they are serving them anymore, because all of the platforms are going after people with millions of Instagram followers and celebrity artists and all of the big names that are going to bring more revenue to their platforms, rather than doing anything to promote and support the artists who were there with them at the very beginning. So I see just a lot of mismatch in what platforms say and what they do. And that's what makes DADA really stand out for me, because DADA is the only platform I know of who actually does what is it aligned with their values.
I agree with all that. I'm wondering if anybody can give an update on, has OpenSea responded and provided any indication as to whether they will be able to eventually? I know, like I said, they're super busy, and that seems...
They just got $23 million. But Bea, you wanna?
Yeah, so this is something that just to give you a little bit of the backstory to that, because we were the biggest, say, player back then, we tried to do it really early on to come up with a standard for royalties early on. So we talked to OpenSea at the time, but because they came, the way I see it is that the entire space was defined by CryptoKitties, was defined by collectibles, and so OpenSea came as a result of CryptoKitties and basically organized around CryptoKitties because it was the thing that was really the most sold. And so CryptoKitties is made by a company. They don't have to give royalties. CryptoPunks either. And so there was no understanding of royalties at the time for them. But the time we were talking to them, they're like, we can't really change our contracts because there is not movement in art, so there is not incentive. I mean, the way they say was that we can't justify the effort and the time to put into the contracts because there is no money on art, basically. And so what happens is that then everybody else comes after that, and it just becomes, it's not that people are evil, right? It's just that the way the market works is like that's how things develop. They develop in one direction. And what I was concerned at the time was that once it starts developing, it's going to be almost impossible to really change it. And now we're 3 years later, art is what's bringing millions into the system, yet there doesn't seem to be any inclination to actually do anything about it. Quite the opposite. And this is true, as Paro said, for the entire ecosystem. And for those of you who don't know, the platforms actually started giving royalties after COVID, if you can imagine, because to me it's insane that crypto art claims to be good for artists and different from the art market. And the one thing that they can say, because everything else is exactly the same and nobody can argue with that anymore, but the one thing that they can say is the second that it sells royalties. And Sparrow, I think you should talk about like the art is organized in order to get the platforms actually to give them 10% last year. And so if they wouldn't have organized, artists wouldn't have any royalties at all in the space. And so this is how it happens. So when it comes to OpenSea, well, there is Dan View as part of OpenSea. Dan View was the guy from from Kitty Hats. Dan View has always been worried about the royalties for art since the very beginning. And since he joined OpenSea, he's trying to get that happen. But I don't think that he gets the kind of traction that he needs inside the company to actually do something. And they're probably really, truly, completely overwhelmed at this point. And that makes it even harder, right? And so I think in our case, what we're going to do is we could always have the market in our site, right? Like if it comes to being too difficult, or if we have to wait too long, we just do it on our site. We don't want to have a market on our site, but we will if that will come to if they just take too long. But I think what Dan was thinking about was to find some kind of workaround with their front end so that we can get that done. But that also means that we will solve it for us, but it won't be a standard, right? Like I think we at this point can forget about the crypto art market being really any good for artists at all in the long term, because it's just going to go into a direction that is harder and harder to change. But Sparrow, you want to talk about your experience with that?
Sorry, I was just typing in the chat. So Super Rare started off with 10% royalties, but they were really the only platform that had them.
Right, because of us, right? Like they were inspired by us, but somehow they lowered it or something, no?
Did so after token 5,000, they reduced the royalties to 5%. So till last year, all of the royalties on super rare were 5%. So then Makerspace, actually after the RDs had formed, before we had gone out to any of the platforms, Makerspace implemented 5% to match super rare. After we had discussed, and there were in the end a couple dozen artists who came on board. I went out to all of the platforms to ask them to implement a standard of at least 10%. And all of them agreed, except for Maker's Place, who said no, they were happy with 5% and they were going to stick with that. Eventually they changed their mind and fell in line with the 10%. But all of the other platforms, surprisingly, in some respects, were very open and very accepting of the evidence and the business case that we presented, we the artists presented to them, for why we should agree on 10% royalties. Big part of that, I think, is research that artists like Bard Ianson had done about artist resale rights and the battle for that's gone on for over 100 years in the traditional art market. And just the fact that all of the problems that are cited in the traditional art world for not being able to implement an artist resale royalty just don't exist in blockchain, right? It can automatically be calculated. It can automatically be done. There's no tracking down. There's no administrative costs, which is the biggest reason that is given for not implementing it in the real world art market. In the digital art market, there's absolutely no, and with blockchain, there's absolutely no reason that it shouldn't have been there. And I think that the platform saw that. And, sort of going back to what I was saying earlier, I don't think that the platforms are evil. I think that they truly believe that they are helping artists. I think that they are just not seeing things and talking to the artists. They're focused on revenue growth. They're focused on increase. They're focused on growth.
Mm-hmm.
And if we've learned anything at all from 2020 and COVID, and hopefully, the world as it is now, it's that measuring things solely on increase in revenue and this GDP growth is not serving anyone, let alone doing the world at large, the environment and everything else a service. I think it really is time and necessary for us to just step back and think about what metrics are we using, what results are we getting, and what results is it, what results do we say we want, and are we actually getting those results or not?
Mm-hmm. And maybe this is a good point for Abraham to talk about the smart contracts and your, how you think about what could be because for Abraham it seems like it's really actually pretty easy. The solution is really easy. We just don't get, it's sort of like this political thing in which you don't have the willingness. Abraham, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I mean, from the point of view of like power contracts, so basically they are just standard ERC 721. in which the transfer function, the main difference is that our transfer function is a payable function, which means that it can receive Ether. So the way that could be fixed from the point of view of OpenSea, when they under contracts, when they're transacting the token on behalf of a user, they receive the Ether payment. They take their commission, and then they send the rest to the owner, right? The only thing that needs to happen for us would be just to send the Ether to the contract, and then the contract will execute the distribution of the profit. Like we said before, the main price or the cost that the owner actually paid before selling the token, it's 100% transferred to the current owner for doing the transaction and assigning a new owner to that token. And then on the profit is where the distribution is. So yeah, I guess it should be fairly simple, I guess. I don't know. I don't have any knowledge on their part, technical, challenges that will prevent them to do that. But from my point of view, it shouldn't be complicated.
Anyone wants to jump in? Any other questions?
I was wondering if collectors have any questions for the art. Maybe a good time. No.
Hey, it's Sharon again, not a collector, and I just wanted to say Dan from OpenSea is a really good guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I talk to him fairly frequently about coding stuff. I think if it was up to him, I wouldn't worry about it. They are completely overwhelmed with what's happening, so I think that's the number one issue right now. But I have faith in him as a person.
Yeah, me
to
too.
do the right thing.
Me too. Yeah.
Same with John Perkins, and super rare. That's all.
Well, but the thing is that it's not some people say that Mark Zuckerberg is a good guy, right? Like, it's not about being good or good intentions. It's about what can actually be practically done once you are completely overwhelmed with trying to build a company and grow a company, and it's about priorities. And it does have nothing to do with being good. I think Super Rare have gone in a direction in which we try to, with them at some point, I thought that we were aligned, and we try to show how the consequence, because we knew, maybe, you can assume that maybe they don't know, right? But we already have done the work, so we knew what the outcomes were going to be, and they doubled down on that. And so at that point, it's not about being they're great guys, but their objectives are very specific, and that has a very specific outcome. And same thing with OpenSea. So I don't think Dan can do a lot, even though he's really a great guy, in terms of changing those objectives.
I don't know what the hierarchy is, but he's not. I don't think he has quote unquote power or a whole lot.
No, but I think
but they're growing.
It needs to be as if. Well, I think we're not the only ones who have that. Eventually, for this space to function, there will have to be better standards, interoperability, stuff that makes people be able to do what they want to do in a consistent and standard way. So it's not about Dan or Alex, or it's about them looking into what their marketplace and trying to find solutions. And because they're the biggest people in the space right now, probably right now it's not a priority.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It's been really nice. I hope this was informative and you get a better sense of, what we're doing and what you got into. Yeah, you got into an entire culture and community. So hopefully, you ride with us.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Maybe in a couple weeks or whenever you guys, if you want, it would be fun to do one where we learn more about the invisible economy and things you're working on with that. But I just want to say thanks for everyone's time. This was great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. See, we can do one on the invisible economy. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. See you guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Hey, bye.